sound. Yeah, sound. So, imagine you're an alien. There's our alien. And you've just arrived on planet Earth, and you're confronted with a forest. And in that forest you've got the beech trees, and the linden trees, and the leaves, and the mud. And you've got the bugs and the beetles, and you've got the birds. What do you think? What do you think? You're pleased. You've met with intelligent life. And we'll prove that. Because the dung beetle characterises one aspect of that intelligence. And the dung beetle is an extraordinary little creature. I don't know if you're familiar with them. The Egyptians honoured them as gods. And they're only the size of our thumbnails, these little creatures. But they play a very important role. Because what they do is they basically stop us from literally hanging around in knee-deep in shit all over the planet. So they play a very important part in enabling our systems to function. And the dung beetles demonstrate intelligence in a very particular sort of way. Maria Decker from Sweden University, Lund University in Sweden, did some research on this and found that they navigate in an extraordinary manner. What the dung beetle does is it starts on the big pile of dung and it chews the dung and gets it into a ball. As you can see here, there's a little argument going on about whose ball of dung that is. And so they then roll that dung away, that ball of dung away from the pile to a little hole in the ground into which they roll the ball and then they lay eggs in it. So it's a mechanism that they've adopted over millions of years to ensure continuity of their presence on planet Earth. Now, the question was, how did they get from the pile of dung to the hole in the ground without doing what we know happens if you have a ball and you're standing on the top of it? It'll roll around in circles if you're not careful. It'll end up back where you started from, metaphorically quite unpleasant. And so Maria Decker researched this and did an extraordinary little experiment. She put a baseball cap on the head of the dung beetle. Now, why did she do that? Well, because she was speculating that this dung beetle is connecting way beyond its immediate environment. It's actually connecting up into the stars and looking at the Milky Way as its navigational device. So we have an example of intelligence of this tiny little creature, not just relating directly to its immediate environment and enabling its own continuity, and enabling others to take advantage of the biomass that it's creating, but also connecting cosmologically. Now that, to me, is quite an extraordinary metaphor in terms of what we are, in terms of the relationships that we have between ourselves and our environments. So I started thinking about this and thinking, well, why are we humans so self-preoccupied? Why are we locked in our perspective just to our own point of reference? And I thought we'd have a little quiz. I don't know if you're allowed to do this in TED, but we're going to do a bit of audience participation, okay? So I'm going to use this pointer and I'm going to just ask you, we'll start over here. Just shout out the logos.
Mercedes, Nike, Facebook,
Loud, loud.
Apple, LG, McDonald's, Rolling Stones, Twitter.
100%, brilliant. So we know this stuff, yeah? This is our world, yeah? Now let's do it again, okay? Come on. Okay, the point's easy. I've done this all over the world, and what happens every single time is exactly that. Our locus of attention is directly on our own stuff. And even though these are fairly common things, you know, the oak, the cherry, the beech, the hawthorn, and the sycamore, western trees, we don't notice them, we don't name them, because this is our ecosystem. This is the world that we focus on. This is the stuff that we make. This is the stuff that creates the piles of junk and landfill, which those dung beetles couldn't deconstruct. This is what we have to do in our cosmological perception and shift from just having an ecosystem, which produces this type of material base and reinvent it. Doesn't mean we get rid of it, but we reinvent it so that it either becomes nutrient for other creatures to live on when it biodegrades, or we completely recycle that back into a different sort of product base. None of this can be afforded anymore to go into landfill. And that's a very important point in the context of the intelligence, because I think it's the step change that we're beginning to explore internationally, both through the corporate sector and through people working on the ground in communities, to try and actually respond positively to the outcomes of things such as the climate talks that took place in Paris earlier, or the back end of last year. And the question it raises really is, what do we do? How do we become naturally smart in our actions, just like the dung beetle, and have a perspective that deals with the day-to-day, enables us to do all the marvellous things that we do, but at the same time enables people and the environment around them to work in harmony. It's a big change, it's a consciousness change, but it's applying our intelligence and developing new systems. So what we did in our project was we set up a not-for-profit a few years ago called Pop-Up Foundation, the idea being that we would have lots and lots of little innovative activities that pop up, and they create the foundations for a different way of thinking about this relationship between people and planet. And we talk about it in terms of curation. How do we curate these conditions to ensure that we begin to look at the appropriate types of things to build the consciousness, to give us the steps and the strategies that might be useful in our daily lives now, that help us to bit by bit move and migrate towards a more sustainable form of community and society, and that our products and everything else that we construct around us are consistent with a very basic ethic, an ethic of care. Care. It's so simple. And that care connects us to that environment around us in meaningful ways forever. Not just for our community and for now, but for the people and the creatures on the earth that are not yet born. Because the legacy we're currently providing those future people with and those future creatures on planet Earth is not a particularly pretty one. So in producing getting the foundation off the ground, we started to think about it in terms of this notion of intelligence and this idea that is so beautifully demonstrated all the time when you look at nature, that despite having consistent patterns, each piece is uniquely important. How do we carry that forward in the design of our systems so that we can begin to think about the importance of local places and the relevance of how we understand those places, but at the same time elevate our thinking cosmologically, elevate our actions from here outwards and share those insights with others perhaps in other places. So we pick up the idea of a connected neural network, a consciousness that's beyond us, it's everything. It's an intelligence of a planetary level. And so what we've been doing in the foundation is just exploring that in different ways and looking at the sorts of things which we need and how we might take advantage of them to attend to the challenges that we face. And there's some really simple basic design principles that we've understood from looking at how human beings have successfully over history responded to this, particularly in indigenous communities around the world, and starting to look at it from the point of view of accessibility. We need solutions now on a planetary level that are cheap and easy to repeat on a multiple scale. We've got strategies like open source, which enable us to share products and ideas and concepts and rapidly disseminate them, but then feed back the findings, so there's a continuous loop of understanding and development that progresses that intelligence much, much faster than just holding it on to our own unique version in our own little place. It's no longer the case that the selfish individual, the ego, is sufficient. We have to shift to the eco. So we're looking for, in our project, small-scale projects which have large-scale application. Things that you can do here, say in this environment, which others elsewhere on the planet could pick up and use, perhaps, and modify to suit their needs, based around a care ethic, care of people, care of planet. If the balance isn't there, it won't be sustainable. If it's simply about care for people, we end up with an inappropriate ecosystem. So that continuous balancing process is vital. And finally, it needs to be compatible with our need for creativity. This is not doctrine. This is actually saying, it's not dogmatic, it's saying there are plenty of ways in which we can creatively respond to the challenge that intelligence gives us to put onto the planetary level solutions for the next 100, 200, 200,000, 200 million years. We've just got to start to shift that consciousness from ego to eco. So what we've done so far in the project is initiate programs of activity in school communities in different places around the world. And we created what we call a pattern language to do that. We chose some of the simple themes that come up consistently when you search for engagement in sustainable solutions. Energy, food, water, waste, the quality of the soil. The strategies, in a sense, that are the things of everyday life, the things that we need to do in order to just get through Monday to Friday, whatever. And what we've done is we bring those different communities into focus, and they look at their places. They interrogate their environments using these tools of focus around energy, around waste, around food. Just like you might do in this room, you could ask how much energy does this use? What do we do about generating that energy? It's sourcing information to start with and then starting to say, okay, is that sustainable? Is that realistic in the long run? Or is that actually creating an inadequate balance? And as the project's evolved, we've just picked up project partners in almost every continent on the planet. And it's an open project, so anybody can participate, anyone, anywhere can set up a naturally smart place. And the intention is that over time, we start to accelerate solutions. So if you notice on this picture, there's water in the southern hemisphere. There's been an issue across the school networks that we've been working with. They've all had different agendas around water. Some have had too much, some have had too little. But water is a pattern. It's a piece of the imprint of the intelligence of the planetary shape. So what we have to think about, in a sense, is what's the platform, how does it share that information, and how do we take it forward in the future in order to be able to best accelerate the solutions and enable others to participate and bring them in. So it's a very, very simple concept that we've developed of participatory change based around a core ethic of care. And it focuses on everyone's place, on everyone's activity on a daily basis. It looks towards the idea that solutions can be found in the most mundane things, the most simple, practical things. But we have to look carefully at what we do. So it, in a sense, asks us to stop and take a step back and reimagine what it would be like to really build that balance between people and planet. A bit like when we looked at the logos. We know that stuff already. What's the natural shape look like? How do we connect with that and bring that directly in to inform and guide what we do? This isn't new. This has been known by the indigenous communities for millennia. We've taken it now into the modern world, and it's starting to be explored in things such as biomimicry, and the whole sort of bioethics of that come through, and the ways in which we can look again at our environments with a different lens. It's a massive educational challenge for the human beings of our planet to take the step from industrialisation to an ecological consciousness. And we've heard a lot recently in the news about being a part of the Anthropocene. quite frankly, I think that that doesn't help me in my understanding of what we are as participants on planet Earth. I much prefer Tom Berry's idea of an ecozoic age, where the human is in relationship with the planet. And that gives me a much more greater sense of hope, because the direction of travel then is that we look very, very hard at natural intelligence, and we start to really adopt that into our daily lives. So we all become designers. We all have a role to play in this process. We are all, in a sense, involved in making nature visible as a key factor in the way in which we understand our day-to-day reality. And that, for me, is the challenge that we face as a species, to go from what we've done up until now, which is to bring that immense creativity and energy of the human spirit and reconnect it with the natural environment. And if there wasn't a great place to do a TED, then this would be it. You know, this is just a perfect example, this environment that we're in here. But even in this environment, our fingerprint into that space, in terms of our critical understanding of what it is as a system, is only just starting to happen. It's like Einstein said, you know, humankind hasn't even begun to remotely understand the power and the dynamics of nature. We need to learn a little bit from those tiny little dung beetles. Listen to what they perhaps are telling us about our connection and our relationship with our world, and also how that then extends as a cosmological shift that perhaps we can truly become a part of, so that when that alien guy turns up one day, they might even land in our cities and still recognise that intelligence. So it's an invitation to join in. This is an open project. Anybody can play. Anybody anywhere on the planet, you're more than welcome. Thank you very much.